We should probably start with this topic of direct negotiations between Baku and Stepanakert. This has been discussed a lot during last week. A couple of statements coming from different people saying that Stepanakert refused to participate in a meeting that was supposed to take place in a third country. As I understand, this third country was supposed to be Bulgaria, and the Americans have been mediating. They have been trying to facilitate this meeting. Before all these official statements, there was a publication in the Russian news agency RIA Novosti, where the Russians basically attacked the Karabakh side, and the Americans, of course, saying that Washington is pressurizing Stepanakert to participate in these talks, although oddly enough, that was like Stepanakert's stance for the last year. Like the authorities in Nagorno-Karabakh have been saying that we want internationally mediated negotiations, and it would be ideal if these negotiations take place in a third country or in a neutral place. So it wasn't like clear how the American side is blackmailing the Karabakh side, if that was what they wanted from the start. And then we had all these statements last week. An MP from the ruling party in Artsakh, Artur Harutyunyan, who actually happens to be the cousin of the president, Araik Harutyunyan, he gave a comment to the Radio Free Europe, to the Armenian service of the Radio Free Europe, and he basically said that Stepanakert refused to participate. And as an MP, he's not really into foreign policy, so the statement was very rough. It was a very rough statement, a very inaccurate statement. Then Samuel Babayan gave another interview to the Armenian service of Radio Free Europe, and basically repeated the point that, Stepanakert refused to participate in the negotiations. However, as I understand, the negotiations on holding this meeting are still going on, and the official position of Stepanakert, and particularly the foreign minister who is involved in all of these talks, is that we are ready to participate in this meeting. However, certain technical issues should be resolved. I think the problem at this point is in the participation of the American side. Azerbaijan wants some sort of direct negotiation, so they don't want Americans to be in the room. And there are also some issues related to the place where it is supposed to take place, meaning not the city, which is more or less known, but the venue. It is a hotel, and there are different things going on, who should pay for the bill and things like that. So lots of technical issues that could be of crucial importance. So my take on this is that Stepanakert should definitely go and participate in these meetings, although it is clear that Azerbaijan will come with its integration agenda. They don't have any other agenda. However, the fact of these negotiations taking place in a third country is already a positive move, and could actually help to promote certain positions of the Armenian side and the Karabakh side. What's your take on that, Artyom? I think Artyom needs to send a request again.
Can you hear me now? It kicked me out for some. It kicked me out for some reasons. So I missed the latter part of your formulation. I missed where after Samvel Babayan, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, really? Okay, I will repeat it really quickly. So Samvel Babayan also made a statement saying that Stepanakert refused to participate in the negotiations in this meeting. However, the foreign minister, who is in charge of actually negotiating, and he is the contact person on not just him but the foreign ministry itself, has been very clear that Nagorno-Karabakh hasn't refused to participate in these negotiations. These negotiations are still possible, and we are trying to understand certain details. So in the end, I said that my take is that Stepanakert should participate in this meeting, although it is clear that Azerbaijan will have its own agenda, and this agenda is very well known, the integration agenda. However, even the fact of having these kind of negotiations in a third country could actually promote some of the, positions of the Armenian side and of Nagorno-Karabakh as well.
Yeah. Well, at this point, it's fairly clear that there is a huge power disbalance. The authorities in Nagorno-Karabakh are not known neither for their negotiation skill nor for their wisdom, but at the same time, added to this is the very very real existence of the power disbalance. So going into the negotiations, I don't think it's out of the. It's one of those options that it's one of those offers that you cannot refuse. I mean, you have to participate in negotiations. There's this famous quote by Winston Churchill that says, it's better to jaw than to war. But at the same time, when the jaw is held under the threat of war, what kind of negotiations can you expect, and what kind of outcome can you expect? As you say, Azerbaijan is going there with its integration agenda. They have been very consistent on it. They have mustered all their political, diplomatic, military potential to come to these negotiations from a position of power. And all of these aspects that I just listed is fairly absent from the Nagorno-Karabakh side. It's essentially negotiating with the hostage. It is a hostage situation. It is a situation where Nagorno-Karabakh has been now blockaded for over 7 months. There is no economy to speak of. The military is in shambles. The defense forces are in shambles. So it's fairly clear that going into the negotiations, you're going with a losing hand, as it were, especially given the fact that the Armenian Republic under Nikol Pashinyan seems to be willing to cede so much that the position of Nagorno-Karabakh is ipso facto a losing one. So it is a tough situation. It is, I was recently reading a Danish philosopher, or rereading a Danish philosopher that I occasionally revisit. His name is Søren Kierkegaard. And he has a wonderful little book called Judge for Yourself, when he talks about the situation of Christendom in Denmark. And he has this very famous formulation that I chanced upon, and it practically describes the situation that Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenians in Armenia, and those who care about the situation from the Armenian side at least, find themselves. And the quote is this: where are we? What is the situation in Christendom? It is not difficult to say what the situation is. It is more difficult to change it. And I think all of us here, we know the situation. We know how dire it is. We know how extremely difficult it is for the Armenian. But it seems like there are no options to change it, or at least these options are not formulated in such a way that people can behind it, where the government, makes clear what is expected and what it can do and what it cannot do. It's just a lot of ephemeral stuff in the air. There is no clear communication of Armenian agenda. A lot of backroom negotiations that the public is not made aware of. So it is one of those difficult situations that has happened throughout history, and we have to confront it anew again and again.
Yeah, so the situation is really, really hard. However, I mean, yeah, I understand and I agree with all the points you've just made. But I think it's important not to be the side who refuses to participate in the negotiations. And I think there is this understanding in the leadership, at least in the foreign ministry of Nagorno-Karabakh. How shall we move forward? Shall we give floor to other people who wants to participate in a discussion, or we could briefly talk the other two topics we were planning to talk and then have a larger discussion?
Granjan, you're on the driving. You're the driver.
I'm not.
I'm a passenger.
I don't have a driving license. In the Twitter Spaces, you are the one with the experience.
Oh, we can ask Kovanes and Simon to jump in and to offer their opinions if they.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah. So I would ask Simon and Hovanes to send a request if they, of course, if they wish to talk, and we could discuss this briefly and move forward to the other two topics we were planning to discuss.
Sure.
Let's wait and see whether there is willingness. Great.
Hi, gentlemen. Thanks for the invitation and for this space. Maybe I can ask a question. So what is Russia's role in this? Like, it's being left out of the negotiations. Is it offering an alternative?
Yeah, basically Russia is not happy with this international involvement in the Karabakh context. Their position is that, there is a format. This format is the format where the peacekeepers are the mediators or the facilitators of these talks. So they have been very clear about their position. They don't want any kind of American involvement in Karabakh. I think for them, Nagorno-Karabakh is even more important. Like their presence there, their role there is even more important than some of the issues some of the other issues in the Armenian-Azerbaijani context. And it's not accidental that they leaked this information about the meeting that was being planned in a very Russian way, I would say, not very creatively. So they used this state news agency, RIA Novosti, leaked the news, and then Maria Zakharova, of course, commented on the news on the very first day, and she was very skeptical about this talk. She surely was accusing the Americans of destabilizing the situation on the ground, saying they are blackmailing, and she was like, this is the first instance in the history of negotiations when a mediator is trying to blackmail or force one of the parties to participate in the negotiations. But as I've already said, this is clearly not the case. Nagorno-Karabakh is interested in taking part in these negotiations because there are no real alternatives. The Russians haven't been able to do anything on the ground. They haven't been able to alleviate even the slightest of the concerns of the people living there. So, on one hand, they are not capable or willing to change the situation on the ground. On the other hand, they are trying, to preserve this imitation or illusion that they are in charge, that nobody else should intervene. And that's basically their position on all of this.
I mean, the war in Ukraine has sucked the air out of the Russian presence in Nagorno-Karabakh, and this is basically the echoes that we're seeing. And Russia is trying to essentially reassert a position that it had going in to the situation at the end of 2020, but we're seeing that it's a mix of unwillingness and inability to deal with the situation in a way that at least gives some assurance to the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. I mean, the very fact that there is nothing more visible to Russia's inability, I guess, or unwillingness to do anything about the situation, is the closure of the Lachin corridor. I mean, what else needs to happen for us to see that Russia's position has been weakened, and Armenians have the right, I guess, and to seek alternatives. But the problem with the alternatives is that we are not altogether sure what is going on. I mean, maybe some people know, maybe Tigran and Hovannes know what's going on, but sitting here in Minneapolis and having talked to people in Yerevan and elsewhere about, there's just a lot of fog. A lot of disinformation, a lot of misinformation, a lot of trivial stuff that is just muddying the waters, and it's really difficult. It's become very difficult to read the situation in a significant way.
Yeah, a short comment from me, and then I'll pass the microphone to Hovannes if he wants to say something. One of the other interesting things that happened last week is this letter by Aray Harutyunyan to Putin, where he most likely presented the situation on the ground and was seeking for answers. Pashinyan had a phone call a couple of days later, and if we look at the readout of the phone call, it's only the Lachin corridor. No other issue was discussed. So both Stepanakert and Yerevan are expecting clear answers from Moscow. What are they going to do? Because you should understand that, of course, after the installation of the checkpoint, the situation was already difficult. But starting from June 15, when Azerbaijan stopped all the humanitarian traffic through the corridor, now the situation is really dire. Now we really have shortages of food, fuel, and lots of other stuff. So these are the sentiments in Yerevan and Stepanakert. And we also have the Deputy Foreign Minister, like Gevorkyan, who is visiting Moscow. And I think he's supposed to raise these questions with his counterpart in Moscow as well. Hovannes, do you want to join us?
Sure. Hey guys, thanks for the space. So my question is, if Azerbaijan comes to the talks with Artsakh officials, with Artsakh representatives, in a good faith, and there are actual talks, what is there to discuss? Restoration of electricity supply, Sarsang. What's the minimum we can expect if there are good faith talks? That's basically my questions.
Well, I think there is a minimal possibility of Azerbaijan participating in these talks in a constructive manner. As I've already said, they will come with their integration agenda and will most likely give another ultimatum to the authorities in Nagorno-Karabakh. I think these negotiations or these issues could be resolved before the negotiations, should be resolved before these meetings. And the mediators particularly the US, should pressurize Baku to make at least one small concession. I don't know, to restore electricity or the gas or the traffic. Because in this environment, I absolutely agree with Artyom. Like this is just an imitation of a peace process. It's not a peace process when you have people literally already. Some of the people already have food shortages. I don't know, fuel shortages. When Azerbaijan starts a mini escalation in Nagorno-Karabakh amid the talks, like while the talks are going on, and of course, we can just pretend and say this is a peace process, but the validity and the legitimacy of this peace process is under a huge question mark. But regarding your question, I don't think Azerbaijan will come to this meeting if it comes in good faith. Before giving the floor to Artyom, I'm glad to welcome. I think this account is run by the roving ambassador of Finland to the South Caucasus. Madam Ambassador, welcome to our Twitter space. Artyom, do you?
I guess I would need to chime in. Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question, actually, Hovannes, and I don't think I have a good answer to it regarding Azerbaijan's good faith negotiations. When you have been burned so many times, the default position is that Azerbaijan will never come to this with a good faith negotiation. I mean, they will come to this and from a position of strength, whether we like it or not. It is the reflection of the power dynamics in the Caucasus, and the Armenian government does not seem to have the wherewithals, or doesn't seem to be willing all of its wherewithals to come to these negotiations in any way that is not a priori a sitting and defeatist. I guess the minimum it can do is lift the blockade, and then talk to them, talk to the leadership of Nagorno-Karabakh. I don't expect for them to talk as equals, but at least talk with some dignity and honor, rather than from a position that we're going to humiliate you and you are the vanquished foe, and we're standing over your, dead corpses with swords in hand and waiting for you to surrender in toto.
I think we could move forward to the second question of today's discussion, and we could probably also have a Q&A in the end for all the other people who want to chime in. So we wanted to discuss the US ambassador's statements about the possibility of Nagorno-Karabakh to live safely within the Azerbaijani territorial integrity. She made this remark during her interview with Bedros Ghazaryan, who is an anchor at Armenia's public TV. And this statement, of course, wasn't received well in Armenia. Lots of groups and people criticized the statement. However, we should all understand that these kind of statements, and not just these official statements, but some reactions, some opinions from, for example, commentators, political analysts who work on this conflict, are the consequence of the policies of the Armenian government. I mean, we didn't used to listen or hear these kind of statements before the April the 13th speech of Nikol Pashinyan. When he gave that speech, I mean, the Pandora's box opened. We've been seeing lots of analysts and experts who used to show restraint before that, now openly saying that the solution is already decided. I mean, on the issue of the status that the people in Nagorno-Karabakh should accept that their future lies within Azerbaijan. We've seen the latest piece by Lawrence Browers, who very well presented the actual danger and risk of ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh, and acknowledged that that's probably the end goal of the Azerbaijani policy on the ground. But in the end, he made a very interesting recommendation saying that the conflict should be resolved based on ethnic minority rights or stuff like that. And the statement by the ambassador is part of this process. We cannot expect a foreign diplomat be more Catholic than the Pope. If the Armenian government itself is saying that that's the solution, it's very natural that foreign diplomats would basically agree with the position of the Armenian government, and they will welcome, because they want some sort of solution. They are not really interested in the outcome. I think they do not want any kind of ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh, but they would accept any solution that would stand. And here is the problem. The problem is that this statement is not true. Like, everybody who follows the conflict, everybody who knows the situation on the ground, understands that without really hard security guarantees, it's really useless to talk about any kind of coexistence within the Azerbaijani jurisdiction for the Karabakh Armenians. And it's really good that the Ambassador Queen actually clarified her statement a couple of days later. She basically said that the United States position is that we are not going to presuppose the outcome of the negotiations, that it is the parties that should negotiate and find some sort of solution.
Yeah, with the clarification, the ambassador was essentially telling what you were just saying, that the position of the parties is basically due to the changing position of, I guess, Nikol Pashinyan, or not even changing. Whatever Nikol Pashinyan said in April, his policies post-2020 has been fairly consistent. He just said it in a very loud manner and in a very unambiguous manner, that, we recognize Azerbaijan's sovereignty over Nagorno-Karabakh. And the Pandora's box, I think, has been open for quite some time. It's just that now we are seeing the things that are coming out of the Pandora's box. We're now registering what's coming out of the box. Yeah, and the ambassador's clarification was essentially that, listen, if this is your position, we're going to hold on to it and try to see it through. And when people oftentimes forget that the American ambassador is representing the United States government and no other government, and the United States government and the State Department has its own agenda for the region. Am I on? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Am I on? Okay. Yeah, the United States government also has its position for the region. It has its own agenda, and the ambassador is pursuant of these positions and agendas. And it is up to the Armenian government, up to the government of Nikol Pashinyan, try to influence this position by conducting policy that is both not detrimental to the position of the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh and not detrimental to the Republic of Armenia's foreign policy objectives and domestic politics. But we see that, Nikol Pashinyan has been going around with a demolition, I guess, excavator, trying to demolish things, and These are the after effects, and we can't much complain actually about the American ambassador's statement if the Armenian government conducted itself in an adequate manner in these issues on these issues.
Artem, Tigran, may I ask a question on this to both of you? So, where is the role of the war in Ukraine? I mean, we see the U.S. escalating, with the cluster munitions. I mean, would it be fair to say that to some degree, like the U.S. is determined to push Russia out of the Caucasus at all costs to punish it for what's going on in Ukraine? And would it be fair to say that maybe the U.S., is willing to sacrifice Nagorno-Karabakh in an ethnic cleansing to Azerbaijan for this purpose?
Well, from my communication with different U.S. officials, with the embassy, and with people coming from the State Department, I understand that they want some kind of solution to the problem, and not just to the problems in the Armenia-Azerbaijan context, like delimitation or, I don't know, opening of the communication, but Nagorno-Karabakh as well. Their position is we want stability in the region. And of course, I think one of the aims is to at least weaken Russia's grip on the region, because from their standpoint, if the conflict is resolved, Russia will have less leverage on the parties. I don't think that they really want to achieve this goal at any cost. I think I wrote in my latest piece that in their private communication with Baku, and this is a piece of information that was provided, that was published in the International Crisis Group's latest report, that they are warning Baku that large-scale violence in Nagorno-Karabakh is a red line, and they are even threatening with sanctions. I think that's a very positive development. However, they surely want to minimize Russia's influence in the region, and they think that some sort of solution to all these problems would contribute to that. Another interesting thing with the U.S. position is that this position has been actually changing throughout the last year. Initially, they started in a very supportive role to the EU, so their role was to help the European Union in its mediation efforts, and they were very clear in their messages that we don't want to create some sort of separate format, that we don't want to become the main mediator, although they avoid using that word. Both them and the Europeans are saying that they are facilitating the conflict, not mediating. But however, with time, their involvement has been growing. And if like half a year ago, they were very cautious in their contacts with, for example, Karabakh civil society, now we see that they are officially mediating a meeting between Stepanakert and Baku. And in my understanding, that's a positive development.
Yeah, when I was in graduate school, my professor, late Professor Peter Berger, always reminded us, his students, that when things come in the mail, things usually come in a package. So we have to look at the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh within that package that it arrived with, and the package being all the geopolitical tectonic shifts that are happening right now. And you cannot look at these new developments. I mean, the war in 2020 is somewhat of a different category, but in these new developments with the war in Ukraine, I think we have to look at the American conduct, the EU conduct in the region within that package, that they are now becoming sort of part of the same geopolitical shenanigans, if you will. And the U.S. Is seeking to, like Tigran was saying, to reduce the Russian influence in the region. And it is also, in my opinion, idea fix for the Prime Minister Pashinyan to see the Russian role reduced in Armenia and in the neighborhood. So, and the war in Ukraine has weakened the Russian position in the region, and this is a time where all of this can happen, and parties, the Western governments are, I think, looking at this situation in that continuum. Not only in that continuum, but again, in a way they are looking at it in that continuum.
Hovannes, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I had a follow-up question on Pashinyan's original lowering the benchmark speech last April, but wasn't his speech owing to American pressure, to American implicit pressure, I mean non-public pressure back then? Because a few months back we had the USAID assistant administrator at a congressional hearing welcoming Pashinyan's explicit recognition of Azerbaijan's territorial integrity. And then even earlier, I think in November, there was another congressional hearing where you had the deputy assistant, or was it assistant secretary of state, praising Pashinyan's April speech, the lowering benchmark speech. So wasn't there American pressure even earlier than we thought? It's not a... so my question is, wasn't Pashinyan reacting to American calls for explicit recognition of Azerbaijan even earlier?
To be honest, I don't have that impression. Like, I've been talking to multiple diplomats in the last 2 years, and I haven't seen anybody saying that, we pressurized Armenia to have that stance. Of course, when he gave that speech, everybody welcomed it for very understandable reasons, because that speech, in their understanding, in the understanding of the international community, made the conclusion of a peace deal, of a peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan more plausible. But to be honest, I don't think there was significant international pressure on Armenia. I think the calculus was different. It was after the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, and Russia wasn't able to actually deliver on its promises. So the tacit agreement after the November 9 ceasefire statement was that this new status quo is guaranteed by Russia, that Russia will keep stability on the ground, that whenever something happens in Nagorno-Karabakh, the Russians would either prevent it or stop it very quickly. So this status quo would be stable. And when Pashinyan saw the events in Parukh, when the Azerbaijani forces took control of the Parukh village and Karaglu Height, and there was absolutely no reaction from Russia, and we had previous incidents in the Armenian territory, I think his calculus was that, the Russians are not reliable anymore, and we need to work towards finding some sort of alternatives. And that's when he decided to give this speech, although the preparation work was going on for months. If you look at the developments after the snap parliamentary elections, all the things when they didn't include their own party platform in the government program, and certain government officials and MPs started spreading these discourses that are very popular right now, that, everything was lost before the war. We received a catastrophic legacy in the negotiation process. So they were preparing ground for this. But I think the main signal, or the main reason behind this decision, was this insecurity coming from Russia's inability to actually deliver on its promises.
Tigran, if I may offer an insight, I remember in 2021 when I came to Etchmiadzin for our conference, I interacted with a few Western diplomats, and one of them, in a brief conversation, was telling me that the proper thing for the Armenian diaspora, since I live in the diaspora, so I think that person thought I could have a influence in this messaging, which of course I didn't publicize in any way. He was saying that it might be better if the issue of Nagorno-Karabakh is looked upon from the angle of humanitarian issues, that this is not considered through a geopolitical angle. I guess the hint was, this was never said out loud, but I think the hint was that the geopolitical angle is never going to win the support of Washington in support of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. So the humanitarian angle is really the way to present this. So I wonder if it was also messaging like this from Western Europe that Pashinyan thought, oh, this is a signal that only if we talk about human rights they're gonna support us, and he basically trapped himself. I wonder if you're aware of any other such advice that may have got us to the place where we are.
I think there certainly were conversations like that, but this is not pressure. I don't think anybody really pressurized him to choose this path. And if we look back at the statements coming from the OSCE Minsk group right after the war, like the April statement of 2021, the message was really clear. So the co-chair countries were saying that the conflict is not resolved, that the conflict should be resolved based on the principles and elements well known to the parties, well, basically the Madrid principles. There was a call to the parties to not prevent the visits of the co-chairs to Nagorno-Karabakh. And a year after that, or 2 years after that, we have a situation when all the major mediators are not even using the term Nagorno-Karabakh. So I think there were probably some hints. And of course, after the defeat in the war, we had an objective change of the situation on the ground as well. But I think it's not correct to talk about real international pressure. I haven't heard or haven't seen any kind of signs of such kind of international pressure.
Yeah, I would generally agree with Tigran, and I was when we look at this situation, when you see someone publicly self-immolating himself or herself, there are a couple of reactions. One of them is you go in and try to put out the fire. The other is you cheer them on, and the third reaction is, videotape it for TikTok. And sometimes that's how it feels when you look at our Armenia's conduct in this. There is a lot of variables as to why Armenia finds itself in a situation like this. But one of the variables that we keep on missing on is the self-immolating aspect. And it just feels, from where I am, like it's become some sort of a sport to go on TikTok. And I don't know what else to say on this.
Our last question was supposed to be the situation on the ground in Nagorno-Karabakh, but I think we've generally talked about it, like the humanitarian situation, the threat of a new escalation. So could probably go to the Q&A section and give an opportunity to our listeners to join us if they want to. Do you agree, Artem?
Yes, sure.
So is there anybody who wants to chime in?
Tigran, if I may make a suggestion, I see that Siranur Sarkisyan from Stepanakert has joined us. Is it okay if we ask her if she's comfortable with this to give us an update from the ground?
Yes, of course. That would be wonderful. Siranush, could you please send a request if you wish to talk about the situation on the ground? So Siranush, I think, left the space.
She may have connection issues with the Wi-Fi. If I may ask another question, what do you think? This is to you, Tigran and Artem, and maybe to Hov as well. I know there is a lot of criticism, and I'm one of those, criticizing the Armenian government. But what would be like if there were three things that both Yerevan and Stepanakert could do right now that they're not doing? What would be those three steps?
That's the hardest question because the situation is so difficult that, like, already because of certain actions of the government, that it's really hard to recommend something, especially that we don't have much information, inside information. I think so many mistakes were made during the last year that we're in a very hard situation right now. So the general trend throughout the last year was that Yerevan was making concessions in a hope that Baku would reciprocate, that it would receive anything in return. But the outcome is very different. Baku's maximalist position hasn't changed. Baku isn't ready even to recognize Armenia's territorial integrity. Like Pashinyan and all the other officials have been, announcing that they recognize Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, Karabakh included, and we haven't heard even a single statement coming from an official in Baku that they do the same. Of course, we have the Charles Michel statement after the last meeting, but it's still Charles Michel's, summary of the things that were discussed during the meeting. So we don't have that. Baku isn't agreeing on the map that should be at the basis of the delimitation process. So the Americans, the Russians, the Armenian side say that the 1975 map of the Soviet general staff should be the basis of the delimitation process because that's the latest detailed map we have at this point. And Azerbaijan is saying that multiple maps should be used. The same is true for Nagorno-Karabakh. I mean, Azerbaijan's position is becoming tougher and tougher. So I don't have an answer to your question because the situation is so hard at this point. And as I've already said, this is the outcome of all these actions or lack of actions. And of course, the prime minister's rhetoric isn't helping as well. I mean, in the last year, he has been just instrumentalizing some of the Azerbaijani narratives about the negotiation process to put responsibility on other actors. He was inventing stuff in the process. And the latest hearing, the National Assembly, this commission that is supposed to investigate the defeat in the war is the same. I think we have Siranush back, and we could give the floor to Siranush. I think there are still technical problems, but it would be really great to hear from Stepanakert. I I am in contact with my family and my friends, of course, and I generally know the situation there. But it would be great if someone actually on the ground could talk about it. Janusz?
Probably internet problems there.
Yeah, there is an interesting thing going on in Karabakh. Whenever I talk to my mom, her internet is better when the 4G is on. Generally, Wi-Fi is like stronger.
Mm.
Like in Yerevan, Wi-Fi is quicker and stronger, but in Karabakh, 4G works better. Just a minute, Siranush messaged me. Let me see. Yeah, she says she talks, but we can't listen to her, and she will still try to join us. Okay, we could move on. Simon, I hope I somehow managed. I obviously didn't answer. I obviously didn't answer your question, but that's what I've got.
Yeah. Same here. There are not three things that the Armenian government needs to do. There's probably 1,003 things that the Armenian government needs to follow. One of them is to have a clear agenda, I guess. I'm going to list all 1,003 proposals here, of course. I'm just kidding. One of them is to have a clear agenda. What we want, what do we not want? The second is, I guess, perhaps not antagonize your publicly, at least, further your treaty partner in this, Russia. I mean, every time Nikol Pashinyan has a conversation with Putin, I take a couple of pills here at home that I hold ready to calm down my nerves. Or every time he just comes out and speaks, he's going to be throwing a flamethrower on things and on people around him. And the third is, I guess, have more Gumretzis in your cabinet. I think we needed some joke in this conversation.
Obviously,
Tigran, is it okay if I ask you a follow-up? So Vartan Oskanian said if he and other diplomats were given 3 months of a mandate to continue the negotiations, they can bring some stability to the situation. Is that a real option? I mean, this is the first time I hear anyone from the opposition offering anything other than removal of government. Is that something you would approve of or consider as serious?
no, there is zero possibility that Pashinyan would agree to that. So I was giving an interview to the Radio Free Europe's Armenian service today, and the question was whether Aliyev would agree to that, with all his distrust toward the ancien regime in Armenia, the former government. The problem is Pashinyan is not going to consider it. And to be honest, I agree with some of the points Vartan Oskanian made during his briefing. I totally agree that the current negotiators are incompetent, they lack knowledge, they lack experience. But I think we should also understand that the situation on the ground has also changed significantly. I think he's thinking from the perspective of the pre-war situation, where we had like a semblance of balance of power. Now Azerbaijan is just trying to force certain solutions, and with the change of the negotiators, of course, probably there will be more competency and stuff like that. But overall, the situation will remain the same. Azerbaijan will pursue its policy of coercive diplomacy, like mixing the military and diplomatic tactics, and Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh in a very difficult position right now. And we need to talk about not just the change of negotiators, but actual strategy in different areas, not just diplomacy, but also the restoration of military capabilities. That's probably one of the things everybody agrees, that until there is some sort of balance of power in the region, it's like useless to talk about any kind of peace in the region. And coming back to the question, I was like thinking about that while Artyom was answering the question. I think one of the other things they should understand is that the international community isn't going to solve our problems. There is so much hope. There is so much reliance on the international community, on some sort of international guarantees. So the idea is that we will sign a peace deal and there will be some sort of guarantor who would guarantee the implementation of this process. This is not going to happen. Even if a peace deal is signed, the implementation process of this treaty will last for a long time, and Azerbaijan will surely continue using its coercive policies on the ground. And I don't think there will be any kind of serious backlash even from this supposed guarantor, if there is one. I mean, in this volatile international situation, it's in general quite naive to think that somebody would be willing to take so much responsibility.
Yeah, to add to that, I think Vartan Oskanyan's proposal was a little self-serving as well. He's essentially proposing to change the pilot in the midst of the flight with a retired pilot. I mean, I guess it's a good sentiment to have, and it is probably good to have a backup pilot on the passenger plane that is in turbulence, and the pilot is not doing his proper job. But at the same time, we should nurture no illusions about any of this. The way the situation is going, the only way Armenia can sort of beat Azerbaijan is, I guess, to be like Azerbaijan, which I don't think is going to happen. And by Azerbaijan, I do not mean, becoming an autocratic state with and a dictatorship with destruction of civil society and human rights and jailing of opposition and so on and so forth, or activists. But what I mean by that is to have some sort of consistency. Every day there is something new that Nikol Pashinyan springs upon Armenia, or springs about into the negotiation process, and we're just left disoriented. Like you cannot. It's constant struggle to grasp onto things when it comes to looking at these issues objectively, because a lot of this just doesn't make sense. A lot of this just doesn't. It's counterintuitive, counterfactual. It's a constant struggle where you have to, calm yourself down and try to figure out what's happening in order to make sense. And the Pashinyan administration is not doing anything to alleviate that sense of doom, that sense of cynicism, that sense of objective, positive agenda. We're trying to, bring peace and so on and so forth. But it is just pure sloganeering. There is no concrete, tangible policy attached to these slogans. And that just throws the country into turbulence. And that's why you have retired politicians trying to adjust the course of a plane in turbulence.
As there haven't been volunteers, I would probably start calling people out. I would suggest Ambassador Narinen to chime in if she is willing to have her input in our discussion. If she doesn't, it's also Ambassador, would you like to join us? Okay, I guess there is no reaction, so probably Madam Ambassador is not willing to join us. Is Siranush capable of?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, we can.
finally. So thank you for this opportunity. I joined you late, but I guess you want to know like how life is going like in general, I think. So I'm trying to following like what's happening in everywhere, and not only in Stepanakert, but I had opportunity to go to be in Martakert as well, like just near the border villages, Janyata, Kichan. So from my Twitter, Marut and others, of course, you could see like I think if I compare the situation, the daily life and these problems or everything, I think it's even worse than even like during winter. Of course, there was really cold, but if we like put aside cold winter, like scarcity of products, like lack of everything. If we compare, I think now the situation is worse. You can like it's hard to find to buy. All you can't find anything, and if you can find, like it's not everyone can. Uh, of course. Afford it to buy. So, for us, for elder people, I think Tigran, you remember our childhood. It was also hard, but uh, I don't know. For me, it's really even hard to talk. Like especially kids, they are going through this. Like you walk through the city and you see like everywhere this uh, endless like line of people, and in the end they even can't afford or can't buy like after 2-3 hours they stand but this is like uh, only one point, you know. It's this hardship, yes, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, but uh, people getting tired from all of this, and okay, how much? And when you don't see any kind of light, and uh, okay, we just get used to all of this, but I really don't think that uh, our patient and our uh, I don't know, our will of endure all of these things like endless, you know. And and of course opportunity and these sources of our government and what we have is also limited, and I really don't know what could happen like next week, like we can afford even these small things and like these basic things, and you just wake up with these questions, and wherever you go people like talk about it, and they feel they feel somehow guilty, like it's not normal. It's not okay. Like we are talking about like find how can we find this kind of food or product. I, for example, usually when I go salon and women talk, I feel how they are guilty. They said it's not okay, like we are talking about this, but this is a part of our life, and we can't live without it. So, but of course, for everyone, like after like every this talk, they always said, okay, we can deal with this, we will help each other. But this the most important question, like will we still be alive, like waiting every night, like you know what can happen with borders, especially with these villages. I didn't mention what they're going on, especially this hardship with lack of fuel. Like even people when they want to come to Stepanakert for treatment for something, if we can afford in Stepanakert hospitals, they can't. You just don't be ill. You should like you can't afford even come to Stepanakert, and you see new statement from government like how public transport also is limited now. For example, from today in Stepanakert there is no public transport we can use. So, but if I compare a person living in Stepanakert, if I compare life in Stepanakert and in villages, of course they live we live in better even condition, if I can say it's better, because like it was really heartbreaking how teacher tell like exactly during the exam on the 22 of June, when they have exam in Changata village, like Azeri start to shoot exactly at that time. So I don't know how it's possible. How can these kids like have exam in this situation? And it's not only about exam. It's not only about like daily life. Like women walk. We were walking through the city, through the village, and they said, like we are waiting like from the every position. They can just like every second to shoot us, and these feelings, I think it's not normal. And even if we consider like uh, these decision makers, especially in not only in Western countries, in Russia, when they are talking with this, even we understand that it's in they talk. This is diplomacy, and they should talk in this way. And when we live in this condition, and they said that they can somehow imagine that we can live in this condition, and others can, provide us security and guarantees. We just uh, we just can't even imagine that uh, there is light. We just see that this end of the tunnel is it's just closed. I don't want to be pessimistic. If we still live here, if we like every day have this life, it means that maybe somehow we wait for uh, magic only, but this is the reality, like only some kind of magic can save us. Sorry if I was emotional. If you have a specific question, I can probably answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Siranush. Yeah, that's basically the sentiment in Nagorno-Karabakh. People feel left behind. Whenever I'm talking to my friends and family members, the sentiment there is that nobody cares about them, about us, and there is this dissatisfaction, disillusionment, both with Russia and the West, And it is indeed absolutely unacceptable that for at least already 3 weeks there is absolutely no any kind of humanitarian traffic to Nagorno-Karabakh. Certain things are already in significant shortage, and everybody, all the major actors, are behaving that this is normal, that we can have some sort of negotiations in Washington while people are trying to find food for their children, that we can call this a peace process while soldiers are being killed and artillery is being used amid the ongoing negotiations. So that's why I'm saying that this is the time to at least start imposing at least personal sanctions against some of the officials who are involved in the blockade, Azerbaijani officials. Because if we allow this to happen, then we only will have catastrophe in the not just in Nagorno-Karabakh. Everybody should understand that there is no such solution as depopulating 100,000 and 120,000 people from their homeland, and then pretending that there is some sort of comprehensive peace in the region. You should understand the political and socio-economic repercussions of this catastrophe, not just on Armenia, but on the region as well. That's why concrete measures should be taken. Do you have any questions for Siranush, Simon, Artyom, Hovannes, all the other people who are listening to us?
I have a question regarding the Russian peacekeepers, the public perception in Artsakh regarding the Russian peacekeepers bringing goods, fuel, food for themselves through helicopters. And because Tigran Petrosyan, the head of the anti-crisis committee under Aray Harutyunyan, who used to be an activist, who revealed about Aray Harutyunyan's letter to Putin, he said that Russian peacekeepers are bringing stuff for them through helicopters, by helicopters, but not for the population. What's the public perception about this, and is that something that the Russian peacekeepers could do? Airlifting, basically.
Okay, thank you for question. I think it's not surprising and it's not new that if we compare attitude of locals towards Russians like 9th of November 2020 and now it's completely different. I don't know anyone in Karabakh. Maybe there are some people like they are satisfied. I really don't know someone. So of course people disappointed and even officials they use this already narrative. So I don't know exactly if they bring abroad something during this time, like after when road was completely closed. But I can say by myself that the product which was like finished, like when the road was closed, like till now, I can't find anything about it. Like, sorry to be so, I don't know, like I'm telling about my daily problems, but I can't do my laundry like it's already 2 weeks. It's not possible to find like this stuff and a lot of things. So I didn't see that anything new during this time you can find in stores. So yes, but every day we can heard how these helicopters go and come back. So, but this is for them. So, but we are not surprised, and of course, it makes us also angry, like because they are responsible for this situation, and they bring something for them. So for them, it's okay, but we, population, like we have like lack of everything, and I just maybe this is not. I shouldn't say it. I mean, it's not this question. It's not me, but I feel that, and not only me. A lot of people feel that maybe U.S. For not for U.S. I mean for Western countries who want to get rid of Russian from here. Like for them it's okay, like this situation they can like take, like they would prefer like it take its more time, uh, and only in this way they can get rid of Russian. So I don't want to repeat myself, but I want to be clear, nobody in here, I don't know anyone who is satisfied by Russian now, and but the fact is that even in this condition, uh, I'm not sure that anyone can live here if they just leave. Like tomorrow, if they leave, uh, I think we should also live here. Uh, Another question is that we are I want to say personally about me. I feel that maybe even something like this disaster will happen, and for Western countries, we know. I have this feeling that Russia will not help us. Perhaps they will try to, if others attack us, they will try to save life of some women or kids, but uh, these feelings, like for Western countries, their it also will be okay. Like they will kill us. Like a lot of people will be killed. Like this is the only way to get rid of Russian. And now I have these feelings that not only Russian can't help us, not only they, uh, they don't take their responsibility, but they also can be like cause, like Western country can use it, and only we, our population, will suffer, and not only suffer. Like I can't do my laundry or buy like basic stuff, eggs, for example, but also like we have these feelings that uh, we most of us like can be killed, and people have these feelings that we are completely unprotected in this situation.
Thank you, Siranush. Any other questions?
I don't have any.
Okay, if there is nobody willing to chime in, I think um, we're going to end this space. This was our inaugural space, and we're planning to organize these podcasts on a regular basis, trying to discuss all the major developments during the week. So hopefully, we will manage to do this on a regular basis. I want to thank all the speakers and all the other people who joined us. And I want to specifically thank Tatevik, who works at our center, who spent uh, hour and a half of her weekend time to help us with the organization, with organizing this space. So thanks a lot. Probably see you in a week if everything is okay.
Thank you, Tigran, for hosting it, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.